Cedar Ridge was the kind of quiet mountain town where the seasons changed more than the people did. Nothing unusual ever happened here. Every morning, the early light would move slowly across the window of Emma Carter's small bookstore, a signal for her day to begin. She'd unlock the heavy oak door, just as she had every single day for the past 5 years. The familiar, comforting smell of old paper and ink would greet her, filling the empty shop. Life had settled into a predictable rhythm since her father passed away. This bookstore, Carter's Pages, was the only thing he'd left her, and she treated it like a precious memory she refused to let fade. Outside, the town stirred to life. Neighbors exchanged friendly greetings as they walked peacefully along the main street. In a place like Cedar Ridge, everyone knew each other, from the mayor to the mailman. Nothing ever disturbed the town's calm, unwavering routine. Emma truly believed her life would just continue this way, a quiet stream flowing in a single, unchanging direction. That belief, however, was about to be shattered. It happened late one evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Emma was preparing to close the shop, tidying shelves and counting the day's earnings. As she walked toward the front door to lock up, she noticed a plain white envelope lying on the floor, just inside the mail slot. It must have been pushed through without a sound. Strange. She picked it up. There was no stamp, no return address. Just her name, Emma, written across the front in a script that felt oddly familiar, like a half-remembered dream. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers tracing the letters. Something about this felt important. With a deep breath, she carefully tore it open. Inside was a single, folded piece of paper. Emma unfolded it slowly, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. One sentence was printed on the page, stark and clear. "If you want the truth about your father, go to Blackstone Station before sunset." Her breathing hitched. The truth about her father? He was a simple bookstore owner, a lover of literature who lived and died in this quiet town. He never mentioned secrets. He was an open book, or so she had always believed. But the message, it refused to feel like a prank or a mistake. Suddenly, a flood of old, forgotten memories returned. Those late-night phone calls he'd taken his office, his voice hushed and serious. The old roll-top desk with drawers that were always locked, even to her. The way he would sometimes stand by the shop window, not admiring the view, but watching the street with a careful, guarded intensity. For the first time, Emma started to question everything she thought she knew. She tried to shake it off, to return to closing the shop, but the words from the note stayed in her mind, repeating over and over. Customers had come and gone all afternoon, but she barely registered their faces. Time seemed to crawl by, each tick of the clock amplifying her unease. As the hours passed, her initial doubt slowly gave way to a powerful, undeniable curiosity. By the time evening began to settle over Cedar Ridge, she had made her decision. She couldn't ignore it. Emma locked the bookstore door an hour earlier than usual. A small act of rebellion against the routine that had defined her life. The road leading out of town stretched like a dark ribbon toward the mountains. She drove in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound as the familiar town lights disappeared in her rearview mirror. Soon, the abandoned railway of Blackstone Station appeared through the dense trees, a ghost from another era. Rusted tracks snaked into the overgrown forest, disappearing into the distance. The station itself looked frozen in time, its windows boarded up and its paint peeling. A lonely wind swept across the empty platform, carrying the scent of pine and decay. Emma stepped out of her car, the silence here feeling heavier, more profound than the quiet of her bookstore. She walked cautiously toward an old waiting bench, her footsteps echoing on the cracked concrete. A man was sitting there, as calm and still as a statue. He seemed to have been waiting for her. As she approached, he stood up. His expression wasn't threatening. It was calm, almost respectful. "You received the letter," he said, his voice gentle but firm. It wasn't a question. Emma stopped a few feet away, her guard up. "Who are you? How did you know my father?" The man paused, his eyes holding a hint of sorrow. "We worked together. A very long time ago." His voice carried a quiet certainty that sent a shiver down her spine. He then reached down and lifted a small, metal box from beside him on the bench. Time had worn its edges smooth, and the lock was tarnished. He held it out to her. "Your father wanted you to have this. When you were ready?" Emma took the box, its weight surprising. Her hands trembled slightly as she fumbled with the old latch. It sprang open with a soft click. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were old photographs and a stack of folded documents. One image immediately caught her eye. It was her father, younger, standing beside a group of unfamiliar men and women in lab coats. Behind them was a massive, modern research facility. Nothing like anything in Cedar Ridge. He looked so different, confident, serious, intense. This wasn't the gentle, bookish man she remembered. A wave of confusion washed over her. "I don't understand," she whispered. The stranger's expression softened. "The man you knew, the bookstore owner, that wasn't his whole story. He had another life before this one. Moving to Cedar Ridge wasn't an accident. It was a choice. He thought the distance, the quiet, would protect you." Protect her from what? Emma's eyes searched deeper inside the box, her fingers brushing against something underneath the documents. It was another folded note, this one in her father's distinct handwriting. She opened it carefully. The message was short, and it made the air grow cold. "Trust no one in Cedar Ridge." Her head snapped up, a dozen questions on her lips. But the bench was empty. The man was gone. He had vanished as silently as he had appeared, leaving Emma alone on the platform with a box full of secrets and a warning that turned her entire world upside down. Her quiet town was no longer a sanctuary. It was a cage, and she had just realized she was inside it. I stared at the empty bench, completely baffled. One moment the man was there, the next, gone. How could he have disappeared so quickly? The wind swept across Blackstone Station, but it was a silent wind, carrying no footsteps, no echoes. Just an eerie stillness. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the platform one more time. Nothing. He had vanished into thin air. A deep sense of unease settled in my chest, heavy and cold. I closed the metal box he had given me, the lid clicking shut with a soft finality. His message echoed in my mind, a chilling whisper against the silence. Trust no one in Cedar Ridge. The warning, which had seemed so dramatic just moments ago, now felt terrifyingly real. I walked back toward my car, the evening shadows stretching long and distorted across the mountains. The drive home, usually a quiet comfort, was now filled with a low hum of anxiety. Every passing tree seemed to lean in, its branches like grasping fingers. The familiar road felt foreign, unsettling. I found myself checking the rearview mirror again and again, my heart thumping with a nervous rhythm. Finally, the lights of Cedar Ridge appeared ahead, a small cluster of warmth in the encroaching darkness. From a distance, the town looked just as peaceful as it always had, but something had shifted. Something inside me. The comforting illusion of safety had been shattered. I parked outside the bookstore, my bookstore, and a new wave of strangeness washed over me. The street was completely empty. Unusually so for this time of evening. I grabbed the metal box from the passenger seat and hurried inside, the key fumbling in my hand. I locked the door behind me, the deadbolt sliding home with a heavy thud. Suddenly, the familiar, cozy space felt smaller, more confined. I placed the box on my father's old desk, a solid piece of oak that had been here for decades. Dust motes danced in the single beam of lamplight, like tiny, silent witnesses. Taking a deep breath, I sat down and opened the box again, pulling out the stack of photographs. I examined each one, searching for a clue, a connection. Each image showed a piece of an unknown past, a life my father had lived that I knew nothing about. There he was, looking confident and focused, standing in places that looked official, important, but none of them were Cedar Ridge. As I shuffled through them, a folded document slipped out from the pile. It was covered in unfamiliar symbols and handwritten notes, a language I couldn't comprehend. But one location name appeared again and again, circled in red ink. It was a place near the Cedar Ridge forest. Confusion warred with a rising tide of curiosity. Why would my father hide this? Why all the secrecy? Then I remembered his private office upstairs. The one room in the entire building he had always kept locked. The room he rarely allowed anyone to enter, not even me. A shiver ran down my spine, a mix of fear and determination. I hesitated for only a moment before climbing the old wooden stairs. The hallway lights flickered softly, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. His office door was closed, just as it always was. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and pushed it open. The inside was stale, smelling of old paper and untouched time. It was as if the room had been frozen the moment he left it. Books and papers were stacked neatly on his desk and shelves, exactly where he'd placed them. Moonlight streamed through the large window, illuminating the dust that coated every surface. I began to search, quietly, methodically. I went through the desk drawers first. Most contained ordinary paperwork, invoices, order forms, the mundane details of running a bookstore. Nothing that explained the strange photographs or the cryptic message. Then I saw it. A locked cabinet tucked away in a corner, half hidden by a bookshelf. I couldn't remember ever seeing it open. I started searching the desk again, this time for a key. Tucked away in the back of a small drawer, I found it. A small, ornate brass key. My hands trembled as I inserted it into the lock. It turned with a soft, satisfying click. I pulled the cabinet door open. Inside, it wasn't just files. It was filled with old folders and rolled-up maps. I carefully unrolled one. It was a detailed map of the area surrounding Cedar Ridge. Several locations were circled in the same red ink as the document downstairs. My father had been tracking something. Or someone. Beside each marking were dates, a timeline of his secret investigation. The entries stopped abruptly, just a few weeks before his death. A growing sense of urgency filled me. This wasn't just about the past. Someone else might know about this. Someone might still be looking. I held my breath, every muscle tensed, listening, my ears strained against the silence that followed. Was it just the old building settling? Or was someone down there? After a long, agonizing moment, the silence held. Or was someone down there? After a long, agonizing moment, the silence held. I slowly, carefully closed the cabinet and locked it, slipping the key into my pocket. Carrying the heavy metal box, I crept back down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The shop was empty. I scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. Nothing seemed disturbed, but then I saw it. The lock on the front door? It was turned just slightly, as if someone had just tried the handle from the outside. I moved closer, my steps cautious. Outside, the streetlights flickered, casting the empty street in a pulsing, unreliable glow. A dark car was parked across the road, one I didn't recognize. As I watched, its engine started with a low rumble. It didn't turn on its headlights. It just pulled away from the curb and drove off into the darkness. That's when I knew. Someone had been watching the store, watching me. The stranger's warning at the station wasn't just a paranoid delusion. It was a fact. Trust no one in Cedar Ridge. The words now carried an immense weight. This town, my home, wasn't just hiding my father's secrets. It was hiding its own. And I was standing right in the middle of them. Thanks for watching, and if you want to find out what happens next, make sure to subscribe. Emma stood by the bookstore window, watching the car's taillights shrink until they vanished completely. The street outside, once filled with an unnerving presence, settled back into its usual quiet. But even with the car gone, the feeling of being watched lingered, a cold prickle on the back of her neck. That night, she checked and double-checked every lock. The heavy metal box, the reason for all this unease, rested solidly in her hands. A tangible link to a past she didn't understand. Sleep was a distant dream. Instead, she spread her father's old maps across the table, the crinkled paper whispering under her fingertips. Her eyes scanned the familiar lines and symbols until one location jumped out at her. A single red circle drawn just outside the town limits. It corresponded perfectly with the forest area mentioned so many times in his cryptic notes, a place he had visited again and again. Dawn broke without bringing any rest, but the exhaustion was slowly being replaced by something else: determination. Fear was a luxury she could no longer afford. Emma carefully packed the documents from the box into her bag, the weight of the unknown settling on her shoulders. She knew what she had to do. The final location marked on the map was her only way forward. The morning fog clung to the roads of Cedar Ridge, muffling the world in a soft, gray blanket. As she drove, the town slowly dissolved in her rearview mirror. The familiar streets gave way to a narrow, winding path that cut deep into the forest. Trees, ancient and tall, formed a dense canopy overhead, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The road came to an abrupt end near an old, rusted chain-link fence. A weathered sign, barely legible, hung crookedly at the entrance. The name on it sent a jolt through. Hurt was the same name from the faded photographs of the research facility she'd found in her father's files. The place looked utterly abandoned. The gate was ajar, a silent invitation into a forgotten world. Emma took a deep breath and stepped through. Nature was already hard at work, reclaiming what had. Hurt was the same name from the faded photographs of the research facility she'd found in her father's files. The place looked utterly abandoned. The gate was ajar, a silent invitation into a forgotten world. Emma took a deep breath and stepped through. Nature was already hard at work, reclaiming what had been taken, with vines snaking up the sides of the dilapidated buildings. The windows, grimy and dark, reflected the pale morning light like vacant eyes. Emma searched the rooms one by one, a ghost in a forgotten office. Most doors were open, revealing empty spaces and silent, forgotten equipment. But one door, at the end of a long hallway, remained firmly locked. A small, stylized symbol was etched into the wood, a symbol she recognized instantly from her father's documents. Her heart pounded in her chest. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out the small, ornate key she'd found in the hidden cabinet back home. Emma searched the rooms one by one, a ghost in a forgotten office. Most doors were open, revealing empty spaces and silent, forgotten equipment. But one door, at the end of a long hallway, remained firmly locked. A small, stylized symbol was etched into the wood, a symbol she recognized instantly from her father's documents. Her heart pounded in her chest. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out the small, ornate key she'd found in the hidden cabinet back home. And on it, in her father's familiar handwriting, was his name. Emma's fingers shook as she reached out and pressed the play button. For a moment, only static filled the silent room. Then, a voice cut through the hiss, a voice she hadn't heard in years. It was her father. He explained everything. He had once worked for a group dedicated to exposing hidden, unethical experiments. This particular project, he said, involved sophisticated environmental monitoring technology that was being developed for purposes far beyond its public claims. Powerful investors wanted to control the research, to bury its true potential and its dangers. He couldn't be a part of it. But leaving the project hadn't been simple. It had put him, and by extension, his family, under immense pressure. Moving to a small, quiet town like Cedar Ridge was his attempt at creating anonymity, a shield to protect her. He believed the distance, the quiet life, would keep her safe. The recordings, he explained, were his insurance, the evidence he had been gathering all along. Everything she needed to prove the truth was in that box. Emma listened, frozen in place, as the story of a life she never knew unfolded before her. Then came her father's final message. He warned that, even after all this time, others might still be searching for what he'd hidden. He trusted her, he said, to decide what came next. As his voice faded and the recording ended, tears she hadn't realized she was holding back began to fall. Suddenly, years of confusion, a feeling like her father was hiding from the world, all made sense. He wasn't hiding from life. He had been protecting it. Stepping back outside, the sunlight had finally broken through the morning clouds, bathing the decaying facility in a warm, revealing light. The fear that had been her constant companion began to recede, replaced by a profound clarity. She finally understood the weight of the responsibility he had left her. The drive back to town felt different. Cedar Ridge, once a simple, ordinary place, now seemed layered with secrets. She pulled over at a scenic overlook, the entire town spread out below her, nestled by the lake. In that moment, her decision became clear. The truth deserved to be known, but it had to be done safely, intelligently. Over the next few days, Emma meticulously organized the evidence. She made anonymous copies of the documents and recordings and sent them to a handful of trusted investigative journalists across the country. Then, she waited. The days passed in a quiet hush. The bookstore remained open, its bell chiming as customers came and went. Life in Cedar Ridge returned to its gentle rhythm. Then, the first news report appeared. It was a small article at first, but it quickly grew. National outlets picked up the story, and forgotten cases related to the hidden project were reopened. The truth, after so many years in the dark, was finally being exposed to the light. With the storm of the investigation raging far away, Cedar Ridge remained calm, an island of peace. Emma reopened the bookstore each morning, the scent of old paper and fresh coffee filling the air. To anyone watching, life had returned to normal. But for Emma, everything had changed. She carried a new understanding, a quiet strength. Her father's legacy hadn't just survived, it had triumphed. She realized the final mystery wasn't about the secrets he kept or the fear he lived with. It was about the courage it took to finally reveal the truth.